Mother Teresa, a name synonymous with devotion, compassion, and selfless service, dedicated her life to alleviating the suffering of the poor and the sick. Her life was a testament to unwavering faith, tireless work, and an undying commitment to humanity. Her order, the Missionaries of Charity, became a global symbol of love and hope, reaching across borders and transforming lives. But behind the saintly image, hidden in the depths of her soul, Mother Teresa carried a secret so dark, so shameful, that even those closest to her had no inkling of its existence. As she approached the end of her life, frail and consumed by illness, the silence that had enveloped her for so long became unbearable. She had lived a life of extraordinary service, yet there was something she had kept locked away for decades, an event from her past that, in her mind, could shatter the very image she had built. It was a truth she had never dared to speak, a mistake she had never confessed. In her final days, with time slipping away and the end near, Mother Teresa knew that she could not carry this burden any longer. The secret that had plagued her conscience for so long needed to be revealed. And so, in a moment of unimaginable vulnerability, she broke her silence. The story she shared would forever change the way the world viewed her, not as an infallible saint, but as a human being, flawed, remorseful, and seeking redemption. A young journalist, deeply moved by her mission and driven by curiosity, was at her side during this pivotal time. Little did he know that in his pursuit of understanding the woman behind the legend, he would uncover a hidden chapter of Mother Teresa's life that no one could have ever imagined. The truth she revealed would not only challenge the perception of her legacy, but would also show that even the most revered figures carry the weight of their mistakes. What could this secret be? How did this truth shape her life? And what impact would it have on the world once it was revealed? Join us as we journey through Mother Teresa's final confession, a story of guilt, redemption, and the quest for peace. Mother Teresa of Calcutta had always been seen as a symbol of goodness, selflessness, and faith. Her mission was clear, and her heart was fully dedicated to the poor and the needy. She founded the Missionaries of Charity with the goal of relieving the suffering of the most marginalized members of society. Her life was marked by prayer, service, and unconditional love for others. Yet behind this serene face and revered figure, there was a story few knew. For much of her life, Mother Teresa maintained a deep silence, not just about her actions, but about her soul. Her work with the poorest of the poor made her a universally admired figure, but there was something in her past she never shared with anyone. Even with her closest spiritual companions, she carried a secret. It was a heavy burden that she tried to drown in the good work she performed, but it always resurfaced in her solitary moments of reflection. The world saw her as a woman of unshakable faith, as someone who touched lives without asking for anything in return. But who was she really? What lay behind the public image of a saintly woman? Mother Teresa, like so many of us, was a woman full of doubts, fears, and imperfections. Her path of service and devotion was marked by moments of great faith, but also by periods of profound internal anguish. As the years wore on and illness began to take its toll, Mother Teresa felt the end was near. The silence she had carried for so long was becoming unbearable. She knew that the time had come for her to finally reveal the truth she had hidden for so many years. Her final confession could no longer be ignored. The young journalist who had approached Mother Teresa in her final days had no idea what he was about to uncover. He had set out to document the life of the religious woman, hoping to share with the world the story of someone who had dedicated her life to charity. He was a devoted follower of her mission and admired her work deeply. Little did he know that, as he spent time with her, he was about to uncover a hidden chapter of her life, one that would challenge the very perception of the woman he had always admired. For weeks, the journalist sat with Mother Teresa, hearing her recount her stories of faith, devotion, and the defining moments of her missionary journey. She spoke of her love for the poor children, the sick in Calcutta, and her relentless pursuit of serving God through service to others. However, something began to seem off. The words she spoke didn't always align with the public image that had been built over the years. There seemed to be a mystery behind her words, a gap between the public narrative and what she truly felt. It was as if a veil of secrecy surrounded her story, something unsaid, something she had always avoided talking about. The journalist began to notice the contradictions in her recounting of her youth, her first years in the convent, the doubts and the fears she had experienced. While her face always remained serene, there was a trace of anguish in her words, as though something was lurking beneath the surface of the holiness she wore so proudly. Then one afternoon, during what seemed like a casual conversation, Mother Teresa began to open up in a way she never had before. With her health fading and the end near, she revealed to the journalist a side of her life that he could never have anticipated. The story she shared was not just about miracles and purity, but about errors, mistakes, and a deep internal conflict. She began to speak of her youth when she was still a young novice, full of faith, but also plagued by insecurities. A particular incident, one she had always tried to bury, resurfaced in her mind. Mother Teresa described a moment when, before being sent out to work with the poor, she made a choice that would haunt her for the rest of her life. In her youth and inexperience, she had made a decision that would forever alter the life of an innocent woman. This choice, which she had never confessed to anyone, was the beginning of a guilt that would accompany her throughout her life. She saw herself as a woman of faith, but inside her heart, there was a wound she could never heal. For decades, she tried to atone for her mistakes through good deeds, but the feeling that her life's mission had been built upon another's pain never left her. As the young journalist grew closer to Mother Teresa, he began to notice something strange in her stories. The details of her life she was sharing didn't always align with the image she had built over the years. The discrepancies in her narrative started to make him question everything he had assumed about her. Then, during one of their conversations, Mother Teresa finally revealed the secret she had carried for so long. The truth she confessed was something no one could have imagined, something that would shake the very foundation of the way the world had perceived her life's work. She revealed that in the early years of her mission, she had made a choice that would haunt her forever. In her quest to save souls and fulfill her mission of serving the poor and the sick, she had made a devastating mistake, one that she could never undo. It was a decision made in a moment of panic, a decision that had destroyed the life of an innocent person. She had never told anyone about what happened, and she had never sought justice for the young woman involved. For decades, she had carried the weight of this guilt, trying to atone for her actions through good works, but always wondering if, in some way, her mission had been built on someone else's pain. The journalist listened in stunned silence as she spoke, realizing that the woman he had admired for so long was in fact deeply flawed, just like everyone else. The woman the world had seen as a saint was in truth someone who had carried the weight of a painful mistake that she could never erase. This revelation caused the journalist to question everything he had believed about the life of Mother Teresa. As Mother Teresa continued to share the details of her mistake with the journalist, she spoke with a deep sense of regret. She explained how, after committing this grave error, she had buried it deep within herself, never once sharing it with anyone. For years, it was a silent burden she carried alone, a secret she could never let go. Her entire life had been dedicated to serving the poor and the sick, to doing good in the world. But in the back of her mind, there was always the knowledge that her life's work had been tainted by a decision she could never take back. She spoke of a young woman who, before being sent to the streets to work with the poor, had suffered a traumatic incident. In her youth and lack of experience, Mother Teresa had made a decision in a moment of panic that had forever altered this woman's life. The guilt she carried was not just about what she had done, but about the fact that she had never sought to make amends. She had never tried to seek justice for the young woman whose life she had destroyed. As Mother Teresa neared the end of her life, she began to realize that revealing the truth was the key to freeing herself from the prison she had lived in for so long. She understood that forgiveness didn't come from the people around her, but from her own acceptance of her human imperfection and her relationship with God. The journalist, deeply moved by Mother Teresa's confession, began to understand that the true mission of her life was not only to relieve the physical pain of the needy, but also to find healing for her own soul. In her final moments, Mother Teresa found the peace she had sought her entire life. After Mother Teresa's death, the journalist published the story of her final confession, revealing the secret she had kept hidden for so long. The world was shocked by the revelation, But at the same time, many were touched by the humanity of her journey. Mother Teresa's legacy transformed from an idealized image of sainthood into a story of redemption and forgiveness. She was not perfect, but through her mistakes, she found a path to true grace. Her truth, no matter how painful, served as a reminder that we all carry something within us, and that forgiveness, acceptance, and love are what truly set us free. After Mother Teresa's death, the revelation of her secret spread like wildfire. The figure who had been exalted for so long as an unyielding, exemplary saint, someone who never made mistakes and was always in pursuit of perfection, was now seen as human in the eyes of the world. And for many, this revelation was not a destruction of the image they had of her, but rather a reinforcement of her authenticity and humanity. For the first time, people could see Mother Teresa as the woman behind the myth, someone who, like all of us, faced her own inner demons, but still chose to live a life of love and service to others. The news of her failure, although shocking to the world, brought to light a fundamental aspect of human nature: imperfection. The great lesson of Mother Teresa was not about being perfect, but about the ability to love and serve others despite our flaws. For her, forgiveness was the key to true peace, both for others and for herself. The secret she had kept for so many years, although painful, allowed her to become an even more admirable person, as she freed herself from the burden of guilt and the fear of judgment. For Mother Teresa, the real obstacle was not the mistake made in her youth, but the inability to accept herself as imperfect. By carrying this secret, she constantly punished herself, believing that her mission of charity and faith would never be enough to redeem her. But by finally revealing what she had done, she found a kind of freedom that only truth can provide. It was no longer about hiding her flaws, but accepting them as part of her journey and, through them, finding redemption. The journalist, who was the direct witness to this revelation, saw his perspective on Mother Teresa change completely. He entered the process with the intention of documenting a life of perfection, but instead, he left with the understanding that, in reality, Mother Teresa was someone just like him, someone who, throughout her life, had faced internal challenges that made her even more human. For the journalist, the true message of Mother Teresa was not in her unquestionable goodness, but in her vulnerability and acceptance of forgiveness. She now knew that peace would not come from good deeds, nor from achieved perfection, but from accepting her own humanity. She recognized that no matter how much she tried to distance herself from her flaw, it would always be part of who she was. The key to inner peace lay in acknowledging this, without shame or guilt. True freedom was in looking inward and allowing herself to be imperfect. The revelation of the truth brought with it a rebirth for Mother Teresa. She was no longer the woman without errors, without sins or flaws. She was, yes, a woman who, despite her mistakes, dedicated her life to a greater purpose, relieving the suffering of others. She understood in her final days that perfection was not the key to pleasing God or being loved by others. True goodness came from serving, even amid our flaws, and seeking peace, even when we feel undeserving. Mother Teresa now knew that, in her final days, by sharing the truth about her life, she was freeing herself from a burden that had prevented her from fully living. She was no longer afraid of being judged. She knew that her life's mission, her mistakes, and her good works were all intertwined, and that, through it all, she could finally find the peace she had sought for so long. In her final days, Mother Teresa was finally at peace with herself. The secret she had carried for so long, which once consumed her from within, was no longer a shadow. Although the burden of guilt was not easily lifted, the courage to open up about her flaws brought her a sense of liberation. The woman the world knew as a model of holiness and perfection now revealed a part of her true nature, someone profoundly human, with mistakes, regrets, and an inner journey of self-awareness and forgiveness. She knew that death was near, but instead of fearing the end, she felt a serene calm. The process of revelation, facing her own demons, and accepting the imperfection of her life had been the true healing she had sought. The relief of finally shedding the weight of the secret was like a fresh breeze after years of torment. Mother Teresa realized in her final moments that true holiness was not in the absence of flaws, but in how we deal with them. The service to others, the acts of love and compassion that made her famous, were indeed valuable. But the most important thing was the authenticity with which she lived. Now that she had accepted her own mistakes, Mother Teresa was ready to find what she had always sought: peace with herself and with God. The love she had given to others was not in vain, but a reflection of the love she could finally offer to herself. Her journey was not just about alleviating the suffering of others, but also about healing the internal wounds she had hidden so deeply. As she neared the end of her life, surrounded by those whose lives she had touched with her goodness, Mother Teresa finally found freedom. Not the freedom of a life without flaws, but the freedom that comes with accepting that we are, all of us, imperfect. She had learned that true forgiveness begins within ourselves, and that only when we forgive ourselves can we truly live in peace. The world, upon learning of her confession, did not see her as a fallen woman or a fraud, but as a real person full of courage. She had taught the world the importance of serving others, but now she was teaching, in her final moments, the importance of serving herself. The humanity of Mother Teresa was finally revealed, not as an obstacle to her greatness, but as the essence of her true strength. In her last breaths, Mother Teresa left a clear lesson for all. No matter how difficult our mistakes, no matter how far our flaws seem to be, there is always room for forgiveness, always a chance to begin again. She showed that it is possible to live a life of service, love, and faith, even while imperfect, and that true peace comes from accepting who we are. In the end, she proved that holiness is not in our perfection, but in our sincere quest for redemption and for doing good. Mother Teresa's legacy is not that of a woman without flaws, but of a woman who, despite her flaws, dedicated her life to serving others, and in the end, found the true peace she had long sought. Her life, now filled with truth and authenticity, remains an inspiration not only for those who wish to follow in her footsteps, but for all who seek to understand that perfection is not the goal of life. The goal is to be true to oneself, to forgive oneself, and thus be able to transform the world around us. In the final moments of her life, Mother Teresa achieved a peace she had spent a lifetime searching for. Throughout her years of service, the world saw her as the epitome of selflessness, love, and dedication. She was revered for her unwavering commitment to alleviating the suffering of the poor and the sick. Yet beneath this saintly exterior, she carried a secret, a burden of guilt she had never shared with anyone. For years, she hid a painful truth, fearing it would shatter the very image she had built. However, in the final days of her life, she made a profound decision to break the silence and reveal the truth that had haunted her for so long. This truth was not just about a single mistake or a moment of weakness in her youth. It was about the reality that even the most revered figures, even those who dedicate their lives to others, are human. They too carry burdens, face doubts, and struggle with their own imperfections. For Mother Teresa, the act of revealing her secret was not about seeking forgiveness from others or the world. It was about finding freedom from the guilt that had held her captive for so long. The world's reaction to her confession was not one of rejection, but of understanding and admiration. People were moved by the fact that she too had struggled with guilt, with fear, and with the challenge of self-forgiveness. In sharing her humanity, she became more relatable, more authentic. Her story transformed from one of perfection to one of redemption, a journey not only of serving others but also of reconciling with oneself. Her confession was a lesson for all of us. It was a reminder that we do not need to be perfect to live meaningful lives or to make a difference. Perfection is an illusion, and it is the acceptance of our flaws and mistakes that allows us to grow, to heal, and to truly live in peace. Mother Teresa's final revelation was not just an admission of guilt, it was an act of liberation. She freed herself from the chains of self-judgment and embraced the truth of her own imperfection, allowing her to find the peace she had always sought. In the end, Mother Teresa's legacy is not defined by her perfection or her lack of mistakes, but by the love and compassion she gave to others despite her imperfections. Her life teaches us that the path to true greatness lies not in flawless actions or saintly behavior, but in the courage to face our own flaws, to seek forgiveness, and to continue moving forward with love and humility. Her final confession serves as a beacon of hope for all who struggle with their own guilt and shame. It is a reminder that we are all capable of redemption, that we all deserve forgiveness, and that ultimately, it is our willingness to embrace our humanity that makes us capable of achieving true peace and making a lasting impact on the world.